There's this old proverb that says if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That's the thread that twines our Exceptional Minds with RoboKind podcast. We want to connect you with the voices, the people, the movements, the work that's happening to promote, inspire, and achieve inclusive and celebratory moments for all. I'm Brian Baggs, CEO of RoboKind. Welcome to our episode. In this episode of Exceptional Minds with RoboKind, we welcome Joe Kwisz, outgoing president of Indiana Council of Administrators of Special Education, ICASE, and the current president-elect of National CASE. With over 16 years in special education administration, rising from classroom teacher and high school coach to executive director, Joe brings a wealth of hands-on experience that I know that our listeners will enjoy. We'll explore his ICASE leadership and his vision as he steps into this new national role and what's driving his mission to support students and leaders at every level along the way. Tune in for an additional discussion on advocacy, policy, and empowering special education to go even further. Joe, welcome to the podcast today. It's great to have you.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Glad to be here.
Yeah, me too. So I know we talked about all that case stuff, and I
Mhm.
can't wait to get into some of that. But you have a day job beyond all of those things. Can you tell us? Yeah, so can you tell us a little bit? Executive Director, Old National Trail Special Services. What is that? How do you intersect with this community? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the ICASE and the case roles are wonderful, but unfortunately don't do much to contribute to the household expenses and mortgage. So,
Yeah.
the day job is first and foremost, and it's really what drives every other role I do with these organizations. So, Old National Trail is a 5 corporation interlocal cooperative. So, we are in rural Indiana. I have 5 smaller rural schools. We serve about 6,500 kids altogether, of which about 1,500 have an individualized education plan. So we hover around that 18 to 20% mark. One of my schools is almost 25% with special education students. And we provide all the related services staff. We have complete legal oversight and training for all the corporations. We do the budget management of all the federal grant money that comes through the state. Um, I do a lot with the building administrators, transportation directors, superintendents. Basically, we are the large umbrella that covers all of special education needs for our 5 corporations. So we have about 55 employees that are out in our various schools. And from that, we also have a very close relationship with the employees that the schools hire on themselves. So while a teacher in the school may not get a paycheck from Old National Trail, we have oversight. We're the day to day, and really love our role. So the bottom line is, our 5 corporations have banded together to do things better together than they could independently to have great programs for the kids in their districts.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things that I think sometimes people forget is that, most of the country is just a big rural-based environment. And so
Yeah.
trying to string together the kinds of support and services to still meet those needs is the challenge that I think most of us end up having to face. So how long have you been at Old National Trail?
So this will be my 6th year at Old National Trail, and I just finished my 16th year, as you said in the intro, as a special education administrator. I've kind of walked about every path there is. The first part of my career, I really kind of chased the head football coaching jobs, and
Yeah.
if there was a special ed director job there, then great. As we had our third kid and life priorities change, I then started looking for the bigger admin roles and what those next steps look like, and really took a back seat to professional coaching and just coach my own kids now. So I've been in the charter world. I've been in very tiny rural schools. I've been in I think the 8th largest district in Indiana, and everywhere in between. So I really have kind of seen it all, the joys, the challenges, and what different schools work with, and the collaborative mission that we all seem to share regardless of where you're at or what type of school you have. So I feel very fortunate to have had the path I did take in education. I think you'll ask about this at some point, but I'm not a traditional educator. I did a transition program in my late 20s, so we'll talk more about that when the questions come up. But I feel very blessed about how I got here.
Yeah, and I think for like our national case members, like this is one of the things that's so appealing about your entry into that president-elect role is that, you are someone who's been in all the different types of things and spaces. And so being able to pull all of those experiences together to see the folks, to understand the folks, to help drive value from the membership capacity, policy and advocacy, like that's a wonderful thing. It's a no brainer. Your transition into that because I think you can add lots of value there. So
I
um,
appreciate that.
yeah, but that I do kind of want to start with this then. So
Okay.
like everybody has like a journey, and sometimes like we wake up there and all of a sudden we realize that this is what the journey has been, but we didn't know. And sometimes there's like some of these initial pulls. So bring me back to Joe in his 20s. Like you talked about a transition program. What
Mhm.
were you doing? How'd you get into education? How did that whole thing start?
Yeah, no, it's interesting really. So when I was in college, I started a business that became very successful very quickly. And by the time I graduated, had 10 people working full time, was making money hand over fist, and there was no way I was going to go get a real job with
Yeah.
what I had started in college and the way it was going. So um, it was more of an entertainment based business, a lot of night work, things like that. So um, I was enjoying that in my 20s, of course. And then as life happens, some things kind of came about, and I wound up adopting my nephew,
Yeah.
who was pretty young at the time. So as he got a little bit older, I started coaching his things and really just enjoyed working around kids. I had never thought about working in a school, just to be 100% transparent. I was
Yeah.
not a straight A kid. I was not the guy who knew in middle school that, yeah, I'm going to be a great teacher one day. Farthest thing from it. I wouldn't say I was a teacher's worst enemy, but I was not the kid they go home and probably talk to their spouse or partner about
Yeah.
in a positive way.
Yeah.
So I always bring that up because you never know where life takes some of these kids, me being one of them. And for somebody who didn't love going to school, I really love working in schools, and I think that has helped me work with some of the toughest kids out there and some of the families who have some of the the biggest needs. And sometimes there's conflict, and I understand both sides. I
Yeah.
think one of our uh, one of our downfalls as an industry is that most people who go into teaching really love school. It was good for them. It was easy for them. It made sense. I did not walk that path, and I really think that has helped me excel in this career that I have currently. So
Yeah.
all that to say, in my mid 20s, priority shifted, and I wanted to be home more. I really loved. I didn't love the business that I had and what I was doing. It was great financially. And I was getting to that point in life where, priorities matter, do what you love.
Yeah.
And that was a big shift. So I started looking for programs and how I could become a teacher. And at that time, the first cohort of the Indianapolis Teaching Fellows was taking applications. And I threw my hat in the ring there to see if I could make that program because nothing else really made sense. Everywhere I checked, as far as traditional teaching colleges, said my undergrad degree in business and management was great, but if you want to teach, we're going to need 4 more years of your financial contributions to our organization.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
didn't have it in me to go back for 4 more years. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so this was a 2.5 year program while you work as a teacher. So it was really great. So to be in the first cohort of that, I was pretty proud of because there were a lot of applicants and I did not feel like I would have been a top one. So must have
Wow.
done something right in the interview process, and the rest is history.
Yeah. How about that? That's so interesting. And I think about some of our listeners, and some of the things that you said on the front end of that are kind of inspiring and great to remember. Is that
Mhm.
what you see today with maybe your students and your interactions is not the end of the story, right? Like things continue to evolve, and so. I'm sure there's someone somewhere out there that's going to be listening to this and have a little bit of inspiration that, like, hey, you know, I don't know the end game. All I can do is continue to show up and be who I am in this moment, and there's still a lot of life ahead of our
Yeah,
kids. So uh,
absolutely.
now, okay, so I get that, right? Like, of the additional options, you're kind of making decisions around what's best for my family, what's best for like what I'm trying to do right now, what makes the most sense in a transition. But somewhere along that way, there became at least some sort of focus on special education specifically. How did you get into that, right? Like it's one thing to have your business, it's another thing to have a transition program. And then there's another kind of maybe like some story of like, well, how did you end up in special education of all the different places that you could have gone?
Yeah, I mean, if we have to edit this out after the fact, if it doesn't sound good, I won't be angry. So I'll preface with that. It's kind of like your interesting wedding stories. I don't have this beautiful, I just knew from day one this is where I was supposed to be. But I believe in full transparency. So when I enrolled in my transition to teacher program, I wanted to teach language arts and kind of get into the speech world of my business. I was always in front of large crowds, always very comfortable there. Wanted to help pass that on to kids. Thank God that didn't work out. So what happened was with the program I was in, you had to pass your teacher licensing exam before you took the classes. And
Hmm,
again, being somebody who was not the flag bearer of being the best
yeah,
student in my
yeah,
day, I
yeah.
kept missing the cut score by 1 or 2 points. And eventually, the program directors, we sat down and said, hey, we've either got to move you into a special education program role and see how you do with that testing, or we have to exit you from the program. So I decided, okay, well, let's give the special ed test a try. Nailed that. Everything on that test made sense. Like I scored very high. It just seemed like a natural fit. So again, thankfully, that's the route that unfolded for me because as I, look back on the days of when I was a teacher, I love the cadence of the special education teacher world so much more than what would have been my experience as a general education teacher with 7 8 periods a day that are relatively the same. I don't think we would be talking here today if that were the case for me. So I'm glad things worked out the way they did. Again, just wanting to be honest about it. So, there's not this beautiful story like my heart was moved and I needed to do this. But once I got into this, it's kind of like things unfold for you for a reason many times.
Oh yeah.
And, I certainly believe that about my path and my career. I love the kids and families I've worked with over the past, 20 years total, 21 years. The experiences that I brought to the table to help kids that also were not overly comfortable in school sometimes. And then, a lot of times the families we serve, school was not a great place for them either. So, I've lived that. I'm the first high school graduate in my family. My parents didn't graduate high school, the first one to go to college. So, I have lived and seen both sides of that table. And I really do think that has helped me. And again, very
Oh,
fortunate to be put where I was.
yeah, no, I think that makes a ton of sense. And one of the things that, like in my career, I often have asked folks even before this podcast, kind of, how do you get to where you are now? And um, you'd be surprised that a big majority of the folks never set out to do something or had this like from birth destiny that they were just trying to march towards. But in
Yeah.
reality, it's like they showed up in this moment and they started to kind of continue to cultivate their own garden, and they found joy and excitement in that space, and it just kept going. And then, like they said, I even alluded to that earlier, that you just kind of wake up one day and you're like, oh, I guess this is what I've done. I've just been kind of doing the work in front of me, and it's just kept expanding, and I found more joy and excitement in that, and here we are. So, uh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a way more common story than I think people realize. But it's a great story, and I just think about you know um, the folks who were really great in school are probably going to perpetuate the same type of schooling that they had, but that continues to miss that entire population where it wasn't a great fit. And being
Yeah.
able to have folks return that school may not have been the best fit or the most exciting thing, and bring that perspective allows us to have opportunities where others might get to be seen, experience different things, and maybe not have the same repeat story that we had, right? That's
Right.
kind of the beauty of all of it. So
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that story. Uh, so I want to get into some of the case stuff, but
Yeah.
along the way, I know that you have picked up some tools and some tricks to navigate each one of these moments. And I happened to see somewhere you had a list of some of your specialties, and one of them that just tickled me. You listed that you were a peddler of common knowledge. Tell me about that. I love that.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I guess in the essence, I have always just tried to operate as a very practical person in any walk of life, especially in the career of education. You can get so lost in, high level thinking and interpretation and kind of up here in the philosophical realm that we forget there's just a lot of common knowledge out there. And sometimes we need to get away from strategic planning to strategic implementation. So that's really kind of the essence of peddler of common knowledge. We've got all these laws and these books of, things we're supposed to do. So having a full understanding of that, that's kind of the common. I don't know how common it is, but in our world, it should be common, right?
Yeah.
And there are just very day-to-day practical things we can do to make everyone's lives better in this industry, and that's just kind of why I've always put that out there.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that deep is the bottom line sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think sometimes like some of that philosophical, like super high thinking can be a form of paralysis, right? And at the end of the day,
Mhm.
like we got to move towards some pragmatic action type stuff. And there's a lot of freedom in that of saying like, hey, this is common knowledge. This is straightforward. We can do something now.
Yes.
And that's great. Like at the end of the day, like we're trying to take really great ideas, but they're supposed to be attached to some just like doing things and like let's not get caught.
Yes.
I love
Yeah.
that.
You can't get in the cycle of analysis paralysis because then you have no results.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we need results now often too. So I
Yes.
love that. And that's actually a
I'm
brief
glad
side
that caught your eye. I think it's been there for a good 15 years or so.
Oh, yeah. Well, it struck a chord with me, and
Good.
I was very entertained, because it is, right? Like, and that is actually great leadership, which is one of the questions I want to come into next, is distilling some of the stuff that may be circling in, thought leadership and all that kind of stuff, but, just bringing it back to real world so that we can get about the work. Like, that's a big deal. Um, Okay, so you're in the moment of a kind of another transition. You've had various leadership roles with Indiana Case, ICASE. You're now walking into this next leadership role at National Case. What do you perceive to be some of the differences or the opportunities, like kind of between these two different organizations? Like, Case is a big deal. It has a massive following and interest from special educators across the country. Tell us what are some of your thoughts about this transition? Like, what are you thinking?
I think it's an exciting time to start out with. I have really enjoyed my time as the ICASE president. We have a 6-year tenure for our presidential tenure, just like Case does. So I spent 2 years as president elect, as I'm in the first year as my president elect for Case. And then you do 2 years as the active president, and then 2 years as the past president, kind of an advisory role. So I've had the fortune of, both levels. The people in front of me have done extraordinary things. So
Yeah.
to be able to see how others lead, take that through my lens and see how we continue to do the great work that has been done before me, although it may look different, and honoring what has been done before me, I think is very exciting. Um, Learning from a national level, in Indiana, we're all kind of chewing the same mud right now, right? And whatever state you're in, all your directors are kind of chewing the same. So as you get in a group of very intelligent people at the national level, and you see how they're all chewing the mud in their own states to make progress, that was something that's a bit of an adjustment, right? Because you're coming from a pretty focal lens of here's
Yeah.
how we survive and keep moving forward in Indiana versus okay, we are a 6,000 member plus organization now covering, I think, 35 states,
Yeah.
and we have some international members. So, scaling the thought process from Indiana and some of the initiatives and things we've done here that have been wonderful And how do you take that similar approach on a national level when it's your time as the president
Yeah.
and, moves the needle forward from your predecessors? Very thankful for Dr. Kevin Rubenstein is our current president. He's doing a fantastic job. I really enjoy watching how he facilitates national meetings and flow of information, because it's just different than what you do at the state level on how you get things out. Kendall Mason is our current past president. He did a great job before Dr. Rubenstein. So again, the presidential tenure prior to me has done just great work. And you come in and you hope you can live up to that level and honor them by moving the needle forward even more. So I keep saying the word exciting. You can't volunteer for these kind of roles if it's not exciting to you, because there's just a lot that goes on and there is zero compensation for it, right? So it is something you've got to love to do and be excited about. And it really fills my bucket as a professional. And it really keeps me sharp as a director in my day job. So
Yeah,
I think I
right.
may have veered off a little bit from the question, but
No, that makes a
yeah.
ton of sense. Yeah, like I'm very similar in that I love to continue to get exposure to problems elsewhere, even if they're not directly my problems yet, because it helps me in everything that I move and do. And I think that one of the encouragement for some of our listeners is putting yourself out there. You get opportunities to deal with new problems and ideas and perspectives that maybe you don't have immediate use for them now, but they're part of developing your schema, and I can guarantee you'll get to use some of those later. If you had to like pick one or two things that you're kind of looking forward to lean into at this national level, like what would they be? Are you excited about looking at building bigger communities as it relates to enrollment, sharing particular sets of ideas? Advocacy, like is there anything that's kind of like, hey, we got 10 things that we got to do over this next term, but there's these two things that stick out that I'm really excited about.
Yeah. I think I start out the most very practical thing that's always on my mind is that we have to keep good people in these jobs, these director jobs, these administrative jobs. The turnover right now is just an awful, awful data
Yeah.
piece. Okay. When I'm up on the stage at our Indiana conferences, looking at the room, upwards of almost a third, approaching a half sometimes, are directors that are in their first or second year, and that
Wow.
turnover is every year. So
Mhm.
this is a job where years 1 and 2 are very tough, and if you don't have a community around you, it's hard to maintain because you're the only person usually in your district doing your job, and it's a stressful job. So we've got to get people to year 3 and beyond. So we've done a lot in Indiana to put supports in place and mechanisms and things to have that network grow annually for our newer directors so that they feel the support and they know they have somebody to lean on. I probably won't do this at the national level, but when I go to our new director training every year, I make every person there pull out their cell phone and I give them my cell phone number. I
Yeah.
give them my email and let them know if you have no other contact when you leave here today, start with me, call, text, email anytime. Obviously, 6,000 members, I probably couldn't do that. My wife might not appreciate it, but you know,
Yeah.
um, but that kind of support, and I've always taken a very heartfelt approach to being human in this role. That be approachable. Somebody emails you, darn it, you better respond within a reasonable time, right? Because if you put out there that you're going to support somebody, you better do it. And that's one thing I'll certainly bring, like everybody else before me has at the national level. So
Yeah.
that's support for directors. Yeah. Sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead, Brian.
No, I was just gonna say that's so huge, right? Like
Mhm.
leadership is lonely, right? And there's elements of it that folks may have gotten a little bit of exposure to as teachers, because that's one of the few professions that you're also in a box by yourself
Yeah.
with kids, where people feel unseen, unheard, not understood, right? And then you think you might have some muscle for that, of understanding that experience, like this community, not understanding some of the unique challenges that are associated with this, the decisions that you have to make all day long with the best tools that you have, but also like sometimes you second guess yourself even around some of, and then it only continues to expand when you get to that executive director or
Yeah.
director level within a school district. Like this is hard stuff, and so I love hearing that, one of the things that you continue to have front and center is how do we get folks to be seen and connected in those, especially first 2 years, so that they can find some success and wins and perspective and voices to keep going. Because, like with any profession, with time, you continue to build your tool set and
Right.
you can deal with new challenges because you've tackled some of the previous ones. And so I love that. That's huge. Thank
Mhm.
you for doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So
go ahead.
that's my,
Yeah.
oh, sorry. So that's my practical answer. If there was a, pie in the sky answer, when I was coming in, I was in my last year of president-elect. We pitched an idea to our state Department of Education of Indiana CASE being a transition to teacher program. And so we um, had to go through all the same steps as a university to establish a program, go through all the same rigor and review. And I was, one of the main pilots of that to get this thing going. So fast forward a couple years later, we've put over 500 special education licenses in the state of Indiana through 3 cohorts of our transition to teaching program. So if there's a way to expand that to the national level, that would bring a lot of support to school districts and being able to open up their flexibility. So haven't scaled that yet, just trying to get through my last month here in Indiana before I really kind of shift gears to that. But that's my pie in the sky. If we can reach that goal through CASE and how we can do a national program of a T to T would be just amazing.
That would be amazing. And I mean, we talk about helping directors feel seen and understood and connected, but one of the real practical problems they have is that pipeline of teachers coming in and helping with part of the work. We have lots of students who have identified accommodations and individualized education plans that they need to find success. But one of the key elements is finding teachers who will sign up for the work, and then keeping those teachers too. And so, gosh, I echo your pie in the sky hope, and I hope that we can galvanize a bunch of folks around you to help accomplish that, because that is one of, I think, the biggest challenges we have as a country right now is kind of um, reclaiming and redeeming the profession. That it's a wonderful
Yeah.
place to be involved in, and getting folks equipped, enlisted, and supported along the way. That's a big deal.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, um, yeah. Yeah, a little tangent, and I'll come back to the question, but that's one of the things that, like, so our folks know RoboKind's an ed tech company, and there's such a strong push that tech can just be the solution that we have in schools. Like, all you just need is better tech, and I think that's the wrong answer for us. Like,
Mhm.
tech should lead to better connections between teachers and students. Like, and it's only meant to be a bridge, never a replacement. And so we have like a motto here that we're trying to connect teachers and students, not students and screens,
Right.
because it's just like it's what we really need as
Yeah.
a nation. So I love that. I'm all for that, and I hope that we get to encourage and support you along that way. It's a big
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah. Great. Great.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I had some other questions.
Yeah.
One of the things that you know case has to navigate as part of its support system for special education departments across the country is policy and how that's impacting. Um, are there any policies that you feel that National Case needs to continue to keep in focus and kind of drive through that kind of connection with local, state, and federal government as we're going through that you're continuing to kind of put in focus as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. Every year, this is a little bit of a plug as well. So every year, case members and CEC members participate in Washington, D.C., in what's called the Special Education Legislative Summit. This is where members from states all around the country come and meet with their politicians to discuss some of the main issues we're facing in the special education landscape. So there's some consistency in the message. We need to always focus on educator pipeline. We need to
Mhm.
focus on student mental health, and we absolutely need to focus on fully funding IDEA. Many people don't realize or understand when IDEA was passed 50 years ago, there was a set threshold at which the feds were going to fund it. It was 40%. We are sitting at 13, 14% of that funding model right now. So that has been an underfunded mandate since the 70s at this point. And I don't know how long it takes to get our stuff in gear to make that ride, but we haven't been there yet. So it's always a focal point. And, you always hate to go back to money and funding, but without funding, things don't happen. It's just the bottom line.
Yeah, no, I mean that's it. Like you know, real problems require real money, right? Like that's just how the world works. And so I totally get that. And those policy items are something that's super important right now, kind of across the country and at state levels. That this is our current generation, this is our future generation, and
Yeah.
making sure that we align the resources is a great short-term, midterm, and long-term strategy for us as a country. And so,
Mhm.
totally hear that. Totally hear
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Uh, so we've kind of taken a couple of little turns along the way. So
Yeah.
eventually the conversation has to end. But I do have kind of like two kind of final questions that I'd love
Yeah.
to ask you. The first one is like, just practically, what advice would you give to the educators, the teachers, the therapists that are listeners to our program that are thinking about charting a path towards leadership roles in special education? What advice would you give them, or maybe something that they ought to understand about the work as they start that journey? What would you tell those folks?
Yeah, that's a great question. Something that I hold very near and dear to my heart is these new folks coming in and those who have interest. So I appreciate you asking that up front here. So the biggest thing in surviving this job is having your community around you. And again, as we spoke earlier, you're not going to find that community inside your corporation walls most times because leadership is lonely and you're generally the only person doing your job in district. So that's where organizations, and this is no plug, it's just the truth, like your local case unit in your state, your national case unit, those type of organizations where you have a collaborative network of people doing the same job as you, having the same challenges and joys, is so important. And again, I'll be fully transparent. My first 5 years as a director, I was at a charter school. I knew of ICASE, and it was just something that I never ventured to join. And, fast forward to now, I would go back and kick myself in the back of the head if I had the chance to for not finding that network sooner. I shifted jobs to a public school job or a traditional public school job after leaving the charter school. And, in my budget was already money for iCase. So, well, okay, if it's there, I'll join. Let's see what this is about. And, you're like, oh, why didn't I not do this 5 years ago? I had all these struggles and all these things I didn't know. Absolute duck on the pond for 5 years, just trying to stay afloat while your feet are kicking heavy under you there. Um, and, I've just excelled as a director when my community became stronger around me. So now, fast forward, it never goes away. At year 16, I could turn my phone to the screen right now and show you a couple of different group text messages I'm on with other veteran directors, because even to this day, we all have stuff that comes up that we just simply have not seen before. Or, what are you all doing in your district for this? So, when you've got to sit there alone and try to figure that out, it is a very humbling and tense experience, because if you don't know the answer to begin with, and then you have to manifest an answer that works, you don't
Yeah.
really know if you're right or not sometimes. That is a very stressful position. So if you can just have your community, now more than ever in our industry, community is so important, and having that rock to lean on, I cannot stress that enough. If you come in as a new director, you're going to be able to piggyback off last year's budget. You're going to have a policy and procedures manual in place. You're not going to have a community. So you've got to get that for yourself to survive years 1 through 3. If you get through year 3, you've really kind of got it. So the peddler of common knowledge again, here's what I tell folks coming in. Year one just kind of sucks. There's no nice way around saying that. It is
Yeah.
an absolute fire hose that you drink through. Okay. So
Yeah.
you've got to play the long game, not the short game. Get through year one, get your support. Year two, your brain starts to re-solidify like you've got some gray matter up there again.
Yeah.
Year three, you think, okay, I do have this. So you've got to get to that year three, because these are really wonderful jobs where you can impact so many families and communities on a larger systems level, that we got to quit bleeding out really good people from these positions because they haven't had a community or support. And to our district leaders and our superintendents, you got to hear that as well. Your director needs a support network. Help them grow.
Yeah, it's so good. There's so much wisdom and alignment that I have with what you've just shared. One of the things that we talk about in our company all the time is that if you want to go fast, you can go alone. But if you want to go far, you got to go together. And I think that's the arc that we're trying to get to, is that can we build the kind of partnerships and community that allows us to have lasting, building, compounding impact that we can have in our communities and our spaces. And there just really is no way to get there alone, but you can in the sense of community. So this last question that I have, it's kind of silly on the heels of some of your previous answers, but we always ask our listeners, like, if you could take one action to start building exceptional connections in your community, what would that be, and what would you suggest? But I kind of feel like I already know the answer based on everything else that you've said so far.
Yeah, I mean, it all kind of aligns to this final point here. Just be active with your state and national networks. You will not regret it. There is a cost, of course. It's very minimal when you look at the benefit that you receive for that. If you don't invest in yourself as a professional, nobody else will. So it's not a matter of pride or your incompetence if you need to reach out, right? Because I think some people are so proud sometimes that it's just hard to make that initial step for support. But once you're there, again, myself included, I think mine was more ignorance and not pride looking back, 15 years ago. But I do just go back and leave myself a sticky note, join ICASE, join CASE, and then disappear in the ethos, right? So just take that initial step and get the support you need. It's there. Utilize it. Keep good people in these jobs. It's a wonderful career.
Well, Joe, thanks so much. And I appreciate the wisdom and the time and the insights that you shared with us today on this podcast. Exciting days ahead as you tackle more projects and try to bring additional goodness that was cultivated and created in Indiana to a national scale. We're cheering for you and grateful for the work you've done.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me, and thankful for what RoboKind does for all of us out there. So you guys keep doing the good work.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
Yep. Take care.
That wraps up this episode of Exceptional Minds with RoboKind. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation and found inspiration to bring back to your own learning community. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd also love to connect with you on social media, so follow RoboKind for more resources and updates on inclusive education. Until next time, keep supporting and celebrating every learner, and remember, together we can empower exceptional minds.